You repeat that on how you take the gun apart and move it on the wheel?
There's pins. You pull the pins on the axle, the wheels come right off. One guy lifts up the carriage. First you remove the barrel. There's just two pins that hold the barrel on. You remove the barrel, and one person can carry it, and then you pull the pins that hold the wheels on, and the wheels come right off, and it just reverses to assemble it. You put the wheels on first, then you put the barrel in and put the pins in, and it's done. They could do it in 10 seconds.
And you said the two wheels on one mule, the carriage on another mule, and up to 3 barrels on a third?
Yeah.
And what exactly type of gun do we call this?
That's a Daniel King Howitzer.
Daniel King Howitzer.
Anthony Wayne had them designed just special for the Legion of the United States because they were going against the Indians, and the Indians had no artillery, and the artillery terrified them.
I can understand that.
They will shoot a solid ball, like if you wanted to take down a fort gate. They shoot grape shot, which is like a blast of a shotgun at a group of soldiers, and they shoot exploding rounds. And with the exploding round, their howitzers, they shoot up. They don't shoot flat. So you'd shoot them up over their heads, and when they got over their heads, they were timed to explode.
Now, how good were the timed fuses in these days?
Not very good at all.
That's what I thought.
You had some that didn't go off at all, and some went off over their heads, and some hit the ground and rolled and then went off.
So I'm assuming for Anthony Wayne, the exploding shot and the grape shot would be almost exclusively used.
Yeah, they used the exploding shot largely. There was no fortification at Fallen Timbers, so they didn't use the solid balls.
So what is the range on that gun?
670 or between 640 and 670 meters.
It's half a mile.
Yep.
So you could shoot at the Indians long before that. You could get several shots at them before they get in range if you could see them.
I think in the battle, they were probably shooting between 100 and 200 meters.
That's still beyond arrow range, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What is the range of a good arrow?
With the Indians type of bow,
Yeah.
50 yards. If you really pushed it, you could get one out to 100, but it's hard to hit something at 100. They weren't using longbows like the English. The English could shoot maybe 500 yards. The Indians' bows were shorter, and
Well, they
they could reload them really fast. So you could shoot a bow faster than you could shoot muskets. But I don't have my guns out because it started raining. But the muskets can be reloaded about 5-10 seconds. And you can have up to 4 to, if you're really good, 6 shots a minute. Now, rifles actually take 2 to 3 minutes to load each shot. And Wayne had riflemen, he had infantry. The infantry carried muskets, the riflemen carried the rifles, and he had artillery. And the artillery is what helped him win the battle. They went up against originally 3,000 Indians, and they had about 3,000 troops. There were more Indians than there were legionnaires. Excuse me. The Indians thought they were going to, when they got there, the Wayne's Legion was going to attack. So what they do is they fast 2 to 3 days before the battle, so their intestines lay flat. So if they get shot, it hopefully doesn't pierce their intestines, and they die. There's a greater chance of living. But they fasted for 3 days, and then he didn't attack. He waited 3 days to attack. So the Indians were getting very hungry. So a third of them, at least, maybe 2/3, went home to get something to eat. And when he attacked, they vastly outnumbered the Indians. Plus, they attacked with artillery, and they routed them.
Yeah.
Then after the battle, he had casualties too. The Indians had set up there's a place at Fallen Timbers called the Ravine, and it's just a ravine. So the Indians set up an ambush, and Wayne had his men trained so well they went straight through the ravine and didn't slow down. And the ambush for the Indians was blown because his men were moving so fast and firing back at him. So
They expected a pitched battle with an enemy at a tactical disadvantage?
yeah, and he also let me get my musket. This is the rifle they had. The United States government was broke after the Revolutionary War because they had borrowed money from the French so that they could win the revolution against the English. So they either used the guns left over from the revolution, which is this. It's called a Charleville. It was mostly made in Charleville, France. It's 62 caliber. And this was in a very advanced musket because it has these bands. And you can push a little spring in here and the bands will come off. And it made a sturdier stock. So you could club them, or he fixed bayonets because he expected an Indian attack at any time. So he, at Defiance, he told them, throw away your scabbards for your bayonet. We're going to fix bayonets. So they were ready for an immediate attack. The riflemen carried this, the 1792 contract rifle, and this was made by the Pennsylvania gunsmiths by a pattern. There was a whole bunch of different gunsmiths, and the United States government allowed the cheapest bidder to win the contract. And so they just threw them together, and they had quite a few that had faulty barrels, and the barrels were blowing up, and after they trained with them a while, they'd gotten out all the bad rifles, and they marched into battle, and they could hit somebody up to 200 yards away with the rifle. The musket will easily shoot 200 yards, but you can't hit anything at 200 yards. You can hit with a group, with a volley, you can hit an enemy line, you can hit a mass of enemies, but you can't hit a specific enemy. Like this gun here shoots a foot off at 20 feet. So you can imagine at 200 feet, the bullets are going anywhere. And then the rifleman, he prescribed that they carry a folding pike. And I have one, but I didn't bring it. So that after you shot, if the Indians attacked close range, they would put down the rifles, grab the pikes, lock them open, and they would fight with the pikes.
So you're a Macedonian phalanx at that point.
There's no bayonet can be mounted to this because the stock goes to the end of the barrel. If you look at the musket, the end of the stock is right here, and then this barrel band is on the end. You can lock the bayonet on the end of it. And then you instantly have a melee weapon, and you can stab people with the bayonet.
And that is a tri-corner bayonet too, isn't it?
But he set it up so the riflemen were behind the infantry because they needed a protected position to reload the rifles because they took so long to reload, but they were highly accurate, and he was the first general to effectively use rifles in combat as a regular unit. The Revolution, most of the rifles they used against the English were militia, and they wouldn't stand up under a charge of the English. So they would fire off, say, 3 or 4 rounds at best, and then retreat. And Washington used that to his advantage. Wayne guarded the riflemen with the infantry, had the infantry attack ahead, and the riflemen were in the rear, firing at the distant targets and the officers, trying to take out as many officers as they could. The Canadian militia had joined the Confederation of Indians at the Battle of Fallen Timbers, and they had been trained in European tactics. But if you listen to people talk about the Revolution, they think the militia was shooting behind walls at the English, and they would make a couple of shots and run. But actually, most of the fighting was done in lines with formations of soldiers firing muskets. The reason they used the muskets is because they could fire much faster than the rifle.
Yeah. Now I have a Brown Bess at home, and the lock is such poor quality I can't even get it to flash in the pan consistently.
Is it Indian made?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a guy named Andy Driscoll in Florida, Ohio, and he can rework your lock to make the lock work properly. That's where I had mine reworked. And he does it fairly cheap. I think I paid him $100 to rework my locks.
In Florida, Ohio.
Florida, Ohio.
What was his name again?
Andy Driscoll.
Andy Driscoll.
He also makes muzzleloaders. He sells custom muzzleloaders to people. He made this rifle.
And that is a beautiful rifle, I have to say.
Well, the characteristics of these contract rifles was they had these style patch boxes, straight barrel. Most privately owned barrels at the time were swamped. They were wide at the rear, they got skinnier towards the middle, and then they flared on the outside at the front with a rifle bore down the middle.
Why would they do that?
Balance. They're much easier to hold up. If you try to hold this gun up, it's heavy. And 20 shots with this gun is all I can do at a competition. After 20 shots, I start drooping the barrel. I can't hold it up. It takes a young, strong man to hold this up and to operate.
That's like a 10-pound gun, isn't
But
it?
it was cheaper to make a straight barrel than it was to make a swamp barrel. Everything the military did was cheap. But these pants, I'm part of Wayne's Legion, 2nd Sub-Legion. These pants were designed in the Revolutionary War, and the Revolutionary War stock they had left over, so Wayne used those. And the vests and the shirts would be all wore out. The pants weren't, so they used the pants for the Revolutionary War. And then they made these matching coats for the lowest bidder. Everything was the lowest bidder. And most of the leather gear that they used was left over from the Revolutionary War because they had no money.
Yeah.
There was 2 expeditions, St. Clair, and I don't know the other name of the general, that went to Kikianga, which is in Fort Wayne. And the Indians at Kikianga sent the soldiers in retreat, and they dropped their guns and ran. And they actually found one of those guns in the 1870s in the river underwater, and they have that gun at the Fort Wayne Historical Museum, and they have an original committee of safety musket because during the Revolutionary War the British tried to confiscate all the guns, and so what they did was they took parts from any musket they had and they assembled them together, kind of hodgepodge, to make working muskets just to get enough muskets. And then when the French came to the American side, they gave them all these Charlevilles from the 1760s, and they were obsolete according to the French pattern, but they were still a good musket. And the Americans liked the Charleville so much that they copied them to make this gun, which is a 1795 Springfield musket, the Springfield Armory. And they settled on that pattern, and this pattern to this day is the weapon on the infantry badges for modern soldiers. And then in 1803, 1804, they made the Harper's Ferry pistol. And it was like 68 caliber rifled. It was also, they were all flintlocks because there were no percussion guns invented yet. And the United States military police still use the Harper's Ferry on their badges.
Okay.
And the Wayne's Legion, after the Treaty of Greenville, disassembled, and they eventually became the guards at Arlington, the Arlington Cemetery Guards.
Okay.
So that unit's still in existence today. And if you look at the flag, the unit flag for the Arlington Guards, they have a ribbon for fallen timbers on their flag. Now.
Okay.
So, that's basically it. The rifles were contract pattern, so they weren't interchangeable, but they all look somewhat the same, even though they're not the same. They're generally 50 caliber or 49 caliber. The muskets are 62 caliber.
Okay. And what was the name of your howitzer again?
Daniel King Howitzer.
The King Howitzer.
King's Howitzer.
King's Howitzer. Well, I could never remember that. Well, good talking to you. Thanks for...
That howitzer is the second model Daniel King. The first one, the barrel was shorter, and they were having problems with the barrel blowing up when they fired them. So they increased the breech area, mass, making it heavier, and they lengthened the barrel a few inches. And that's the second
It doesn't look like you hardly got room to put the shell in as it is.
It's a very short barrel. And when you shoot them with blanks, most of the powder explodes outside the barrel, and they are generally as loud as the longer cannons that use heavier loads.
So how long is that barrel?
I think it's 18 inches.
18 inches.
That's just off the top of my head. I don't remember exactly. If there's a place now downtown Defiance, and I forgot the name of it, something Memories, and they have all kinds of historical books about the local area and Wayne's Legion.
Yeah, I think my parents went there once.
Yeah. They have Bayonets in the Wilderness, which is a book just about the Fallen Timbers campaign, all the way up to when they built the fort at Fort Wayne. After the battle, after they routed the Indians, Wayne mustered his troops and they marched to Fort Miami, an English fort in Toledo. And he tried to lure the English commander into another battle because he wanted to wipe them out. But technically he didn't have orders to attack them, so he couldn't attack them unless they attacked him. And the English had a sickness go through the fort, and 2/3 of his men were sick, so he didn't attack. So the English holed up inside their fort. Wayne tried luring them out for a while, and they wouldn't come out, so they just continued on to Fort Wayne.
Okay.
The English were the reason that we were at war with the Indians. They were giving the Indians guns and powder and bullets to attack the white settlers in the area. And the Indians had been successful up until Wayne at beating the Americans. But once Wayne got the troops, he got 3,000 something men, he trained them and trained them and trained them so they all could fire rapid fire and march. And he used Baron von Steuben's book of marching because the English had a cadence and they moved a certain amount of moves per minute. And von Steuben's was faster than that, so the Americans could get off more shots per minute than the English. So Wayne was sure he was going to beat the English, but they wouldn't come out of their fort. So.
By cadence, you mean the load, fire, sequence, and everything?
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of the British as being inefficient in that sort of thing, considering how popular.
They were the best army in the world, but the only ones better than the English at the time were the Prussians, and Baron von Steuben was Prussian, and he taught Washington's troops at Valley Forge how to move under Steuben's marching orders, and they became faster, and that gave them an advantage in the Revolutionary War. And Wayne had been following, his troops had been trained under that maneuvering, so they were the fastest in the world at the time. The English were better supplied. They had their own armories, so their guns were armory made, where most of Wayne's were made by contractors for the lowest bidder.
Yeah.
And it remains that way to this day. The military always takes the lowest bid. So when you tell a modern soldier military grade,
He just chuckles
yeah,
or
they
looks very.
chuckle because military grade doesn't mean the best grade. It
Yeah,
means
industrial
the lowest
grade
bid.
means the same thing too. Yeah.
I'm gonna put these in my rack.
Well, it's good talking to you. Thanks for.
Thank you.
Those are some beautiful weapons.